Have you ever trusted someone so completely, only to discover they were plotting against you, in front of everyone? That's exactly what happened to me. My name's Alex, and I work in a high-pressure marketing firm. I've always been the guy who works hard, trusts his team, and believes in loyalty. Sometimes too much. But one ordinary Tuesday, during a project review meeting, all that trust exploded into humiliation. It began like any other meeting: slides, charts, deadlines. But then, Ryan, a coworker I considered a friend, subtly twisted my work. Numbers I spent weeks perfecting were altered, my ideas reframed as someone else's. And in front of the entire department, I became the one under scrutiny. My gut screamed something was wrong, yet I froze, caught between disbelief and rage. The room felt heavier, whispers floating across the table. Eyes flicked toward me, waiting for my reaction. Ryan's calm smile didn't help. It was a smirk only I seemed to notice, a silent signal of triumph. Before I reveal what happened next, make sure you subscribe. I'm sharing every shocking detail of this betrayal, and you don't want to miss the twists ahead. I had no idea this was just the beginning of a meticulously planned betrayal. Before the meeting disaster, life at the office felt routine, almost comforting. I'm Alex, 28, ambitious and driven. My team was small but competitive, and I prided myself on being reliable, organized, and someone others could trust. I genuinely enjoyed my work, the projects, deadlines, and the thrill of proving myself. But the office wasn't all friendly smiles and coffee breaks. Beneath the surface, whispers and subtle rivalries simmered. People compared achievements, hinted at others' mistakes, and occasionally undermined one another when no one was looking. I noticed, but I believed honesty and hard work would shield me. Ryan stood out among my colleagues. Outwardly, he was charming, supportive, even offering to help with tricky tasks. We shared laughs, brainstormed ideas, and occasionally celebrated small wins together. I thought he was a genuine friend, a reliable teammate in the cutthroat environment. In hindsight, the warning signs were there. Subtle smirks when I succeeded, offhand comments about my work, moments when his compliments felt slightly manipulative. At the time, I ignored them. I wanted to trust, to believe in friendship. I had no idea that beneath that charm, Ryan was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment was approaching faster than I could imagine. Ryan, that's the coworker who would change everything. At first glance, he seemed perfect, polished, confident, and effortlessly charming. He had a way of making people like him, blending seamlessly into the team, never raised presentations. I shared my ideas openly, trusted him with sensitive data, and even confided in him about my ambitions. Every nod, smile, and piece of advice felt genuine, reassuring me that he had my back. But in reality, every gesture was calculated. There were subtle signs I ignored. A lingering glance at my screen, comments that slightly twisted my words, a smirk when my ideas were praised by others. I brushed them off, attributing them to office competitiveness. Looking back, it's clear. Ryan had been patient, methodical, and cunning. He was building trust only to destroy it, and the moment he struck wouldn't be small or subtle. It would be public, humiliating, and devastating. I had no idea that my so-called friend had already laid the foundation for a betrayal that would leave me reeling in front of the entire department. In the weeks before the meeting, Ryan's behavior started feeling off. At first, it was subtle. He'd forget to copy me on important emails, claim he'd completed tasks I knew were pending, or suggest minor changes that seemed harmless but conveniently favored him. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking things. Then came the moments I couldn't ignore. He lingered near my desk, glancing at my screen a little too long, asking probing questions about project progress, or offering help that later turned my work into something that reflected better on him than me. One night, I stayed late finishing a report and later realized he had sent an edited version to the manager without my knowledge. His casual justification, "I thought this would help." Small micro-expressions added to my unease, a smirk here, a subtle nod there, signals that he knew something I didn't. My gut started warning me, but I suppressed it. I wanted to trust, and I wanted to believe he was just a hard-working colleague. Little did I know, every manipulation, every small lie was a step toward a betrayal that would explode in the most humiliating way during that fateful meeting. Despite the subtle warning signs, I continued to trust Ryan. It wasn't blind trust, or at least I told myself it wasn't. But I believed in collaboration and honesty, sharing ideas, discussing strategies, and confiding in him about my career goals felt natural. I assumed transparency would build loyalty, not suspicion. Ryan seemed genuinely invested in my progress. He laughed at my jokes, praised my efforts in meetings, and offered advice that appeared helpful. I believed we were building a solid professional partnership, perhaps even friendship. Looking back, I realize it was all part of a carefully constructed facade. Sometimes I wonder if I ignored the nagging doubts because I wanted to believe in people. Every compliment, every gesture of support was perfectly timed to lower my trust I placed in him would soon be weaponized. The project we were working on together, the one I thought we were building as equals, was about to become the stage for a calculated betrayal. And I had no idea it was coming. Looking back, the warning signs were obvious. Yet I convinced myself they were coincidences. Ryan's friendly advice, subtly undermining my ideas. The times he claimed small wins as his own. Even the whispered comments in the hallway, all seemed minor, nothing worth confronting. I told myself it was normal office politics. Even when my manager praised Ryan for work I had done, I stayed silent. Pride and fear of confrontation held me back. Every time I ignored a red flag, I unknowingly strengthened Ryan's control. I was walking blind into a trap, trusting someone whose agenda didn't include me at all. Occasionally, a chill ran down my spine. Brief moments of doubt, fleeting instincts told me something wasn't right. But I dismissed them, choosing to believe in teamwork, fairness, and loyalty. I wanted to trust Ryan, and he knew it. By the time the meeting came, all the small manipulations had aligned perfectly. The stage was set. The tension, though invisible, was suffocating. And I had no idea that the betrayal I had subconsciously feared was about to hit me like a gut punch. Public, calculated, and devastating. The project was massive, a high-stakes marketing campaign that could make or break our team's reputation. Months of research, endless hours of preparation, and sleepless nights had gone into it. I was proud of my work, and Ryan had been my partner every step of the way. Together, we brainstormed strategies, designed presentations, and compiled data that we believed would impress management. Pressure mounted, deadlines loomed, expectations were sky high, and the tiniest error could jeopardize credibility. I triple-checked my numbers, rehearsed every talking point, and prepared for every potential question. I assumed Ryan had done the same. Unbeknownst to me, Ryan's plan was already in motion. While I focused on perfecting my section, He had been quietly manipulating the information I trusted him with. He was ready to twist facts, shift credit, and position himself as the hero of the project, leaving me humiliated. I had no idea that the project I poured my heart into would soon become the weapon Ryan used against me. The tension was palpable, a storm brewing behind the conference room doors, and I was about to walk straight into a trap meticulously crafted to ruin. Flicked toward mine occasionally, a smirk barely noticeable, almost teasing. Was it encouragement or something else? I pushed the unease aside, convincing myself I was imagining things. Every second felt stretched, heavy with anticipation. Colleagues whispered softly, their tones masking curiosity and unease. Ryan leaned slightly closer to the manager, murmuring something I couldn't catch, yet I felt the shift. My gut twisted in warning, but I ignored it. I didn't yet realize these fleeting moments were the calm before a storm. The betrayal I had feared, the one gnawing at the back of my mind for weeks, was about to erupt publicly. And when it did, I would have no choice but to face it head-on. The manager walked in, signaling the official start. Everyone settled into their chairs, screens flickering to life, and I took a deep breath, ready to present my section. Confidence and preparation were my shields. After all, I had done everything meticulously. Ryan went first, speaking smoothly, effortlessly, as if the room belonged to him. At first, I felt impressed. He seemed competent, professional, even charming. But then subtle shifts began. The slides he controlled showed small discrepancies. Percentages didn't match my calculations. Data was reworded to misrepresent my contributions, and phrasing suggested he had done the work himself. A pang of unease hit me. I glanced at the manager for reassurance but found a neutral expression, giving nothing away. Whispers rippled around the room, colleagues exchanging curious glances. My heart pounded. The tension was rising. Then it hit me. This wasn't accidental. Every adjustment Ryan made, every turn of phrase was deliberate. He had been plotting this, orchestrating my humiliation piece by piece. The trap had been set, and I was walking right into it, blind to the storm that was about to hit in front of everyone. As Ryan spoke, I noticed the first undeniable sign that something was wrong. He referenced data we had collected, but the numbers didn't match my calculations. My heart skipped a beat. I had double-checked every figure, yet here it was, distorted and presented as if it were his work. I froze, scanning the slides, disbelief and panic washing over me. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Every subtle phrasing, every rearranged chart implied my incompetence while elevating him. My mind raced. Had anyone else noticed? Would I be able to explain myself without sounding defensive? Then I caught it. A barely perceptible smirk, a glance from Ryan like a predator acknowledging a trapped prey. The realization hit hard. He had orchestrated this betrayal. Betrayal wasn't just personal. It was public, calculated, and psychologically piercing. And in that moment, I knew the real test had begun. Reclaiming my credibility and outsmarting someone who had tried to ruin me. And then it happened. The moment that broke me. Ryan leaned forward, calm and composed, addressing the manager. I took the liberty of refining Alex's data for clarity. I thought this might make the presentation stronger. The words hit me like a blow. Refining my data? He had completely twisted my work, altered numbers, and reframed my contributions to make me appear incompetent. The room went quiet. A tense pause, stretching, as the manager nodded appreciatively at Ryan's initiative. I felt heat rise to my face, a mixture of disbelief, humiliation, and boiling anger. Colleagues exchanged glances, some confused, some whispering, but no one yet spoke up. Ryan's smirk was subtle, almost imperceptible, but to me, it shouted triumph. Every carefully constructed step he had taken, every manipulation, had led to this public humiliation. I wanted to defend myself, to shout, to expose the truth, but my voice caught in my throat. The betrayal was meticulous, calculated, and ruthless, and I realized, in that heavy, suffocating moment, that this wasn't just about the project. It was about power, perception, and control. The fallout had begun, and I had no idea just how far Ryan would push it. For a moment, I couldn't move. My hands clenched under the table, my face burning with a mix of humiliation, disbelief, and rising anger. The office, once familiar and safe, had transformed into a stage for my public embarrassment. I could hear whispers from colleagues, soft shuffling of papers, and the faint hum of murmurs spreading across the room. Every eye seemed to pierce through me, silently questioning my competence. Ryan, seated across from me, radiated calm confidence, smugly aware of the chaos he had created. The subtle smirk on his face was a silent declaration. I won. My pulse raced, adrenaline surging, but I forced myself to remain composed. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Every second Ryan manipulated the presentation, tightened the psychological grip he had over the room. The manager, oblivious to the deception, asked questions, highlighting the very discrepancies he had engineered. My heart pounded, mind racing. Should I confront him now, or wait for the right moment to reclaim my credibility? Humiliated me publicly, twisted my hard work, and manipulated perception to make himself look competent. Yet he spoke as if nothing had happened. The arrogance, the audacity, it was staggering. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but he interrupted with a dismissive smile, subtly implying I was overreacting. Around us, colleagues exchanged uneasy glances. Some were unsure how to react. Others were quietly impressed with Ryan's initiative. It became painfully clear that he had planned this meticulously, anticipating every reaction. Inside, my emotions churned. Rage, disbelief, and humiliation. But I forced a neutral expression. I had learned something crucial. Confrontation in that moment would play into his hands. This was psychological warfare, and patience would be my weapon. And in that instant, I knew I had to plan carefully. I couldn't let this betrayal stand. One way or another, the tables would turn. And when they did, Ryan would see the consequences of his calculated deception. The room was heavy with tension, and the reactions of my colleagues only amplified the sting of betrayal. Some stared blankly, unsure how to respond. A few exchanged subtle glances, whispering quietly, their expressions betraying the realization that Ryan's initiative wasn't what it seemed. Worst of all were the few who nodded or smiled approvingly, as if endorsing his twisted version of events. I felt isolated, exposed, not just professionally, but personally. The person I had trusted had manipulated not only my work, but the perception of my competence. Each approving glance Ryan received felt like a fresh wound, I could almost see the invisible web he had spun, entangling not only me but the entire team in his narrative. My mind raced. Had anyone suspected him before? Could I salvage my credibility now? Should I speak up immediately or wait for the right opportunity? The embarrassment, frustration, and anger blended into a tight knot in my chest. One thing was certain: this betrayal wouldn't end in that meeting. Ryan had lit a fire, and I was determined to respond strategically. His arrogance would be his downfall, and I was already plotting the first move. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk feeling drained, humiliated, and seething. The adrenaline that had kept me composed during the confrontation vanished, leaving a mix of anger and disbelief. Every detail replayed in my mind. Ryan's smug expressions, the distorted data, the manager's unwitting nods. Each memory was a fresh sting, a reminder of how meticulously he had orchestrated this public betrayal. I tried to focus on work, but it felt mechanical. Every keystroke a reminder of what had just happened. I glanced around, noticing colleagues' subtle reactions, some sympathetic, some wary, and others who seemed impressed by Ryan's manipulation. The isolation outside the office, their shock and validation helped me process the incident, but it also reinforced that I couldn't let this slide. Impulsive revenge could backfire, but a strategic response could reclaim both my credibility and dignity. Deep down, anger began to morph into focus. The betrayal had lit a fire inside me. I would respond, not recklessly, but with calculated precision. Ryan had underestimated me, and that mistake would be his undoing. I knew I couldn't face this alone. After the humiliating meeting, I reached out to a few trusted friends and mentors, sharing every detail of Ryan's calculated betrayal. Their reactions were a mix of shock, disbelief, and anger, echoing my own feelings and giving me a clearer perspective. They advised me to stay calm, to act strategically rather than impulsively. One friend suggested meticulously documenting everything: emails, files, messages, even small incidents that seemed trivial at the time. Another emphasized patience. Ryan had spent weeks planning, so my response needed to be equally calculated. Acting too quickly could backfire, giving him an excuse to spin the narrative further. As I absorbed their advice, I began piecing together a plan. I realized that revenge, or rather justice, wouldn't be emotional outbursts. It would require precision, timing, and psychological impact. Every detail mattered: what to reveal, when, and to whom. The humiliation and anger I felt were fueling a focus I hadn't experienced before. The betrayal that had left me exposed was about to become a catalyst. I would turn the tables, and when I did, Ryan would face the consequences of underestimating me. I knew that any response had to be precise. Revenge wouldn't be emotional. It had to be strategic, professional, and undeniable. I spent hours analyzing every detail: Ryan's habits, the ways he twisted facts, and the weaknesses in his carefully constructed facade. Every email, every minor slip-up, every overlooked document became part of a growing dossier. The first step was subtle exposure. I began gathering all evidence: original files, timestamps, emails, and communication proving my contributions. I quietly spoke to colleagues who had noticed discrepancies but were hesitant to intervene. Their support could turn my evidence into an undeniable case. Next came timing. Acting too early might allow Ryan to spin his story. Acting too late could let him cement his false narrative. I planned to strike when he felt untouchable, confident that no one suspected a thing. As the pieces of my strategy fell into place, anger transformed into focus. The humiliation that had once crushed me now fueled a drive for calculated retribution. Ryan's manipulation had been meticulous, but so was my plan, and when executed, It would not only reclaim every step had been meticulously planned. I started by sending an updated version of the project report to the manager, complete with original data, clearly labeled contributions, and subtle annotations highlighting discrepancies. It was professional, factual, and impossible to dispute. Next, I discreetly shared the evidence with a few trusted colleagues who had been uneasy about Ryan's actions. Their reactions were immediate: quiet nods, approving glances, and whispered confirmations that I was not alone. Ryan's carefully constructed narrative was beginning to unravel. During the follow-up meeting, I calmly presented the original data, walking the manager and team through discrepancies and contrasting them with Ryan's altered version. I maintained a neutral tone, letting the facts speak for themselves. The energy in the room shifted. Ryan, once confident and smug, now looked uneasy, forced to defend himself against evidence he hadn't anticipated being exposed. Colleagues watched in silence, sensing the reversal of power. The humiliation I had suffered was now his burden, and I felt a surge of satisfaction and empowerment. This was no petty revenge. It was precise, strategic, and justified. The tables had turned, and Ryan would never see the next move coming. The follow-up meeting had become the battlefield. Ryan, once the confident manipulator, now faltered under the weight of undeniable evidence. Every altered document, every twisted phrase, and every manipulated statistic was now laid bare. I calmly walked through the discrepancies, pointing out the original data, highlighting the contributions that were rightfully mine, and contrasting them with Ryan's alterations. The manager's eyes widened as the reality sank in. Colleagues who had been unsure moments ago now whispered confirmations and exchanged glances, realizing the extent of Ryan's deception. Ryan's previously smug demeanor cracked. Hesitation and panic flickered across his face. For the first time, he was vulnerable. I kept my tone neutral, professional, letting the facts do the work. The humiliation I had endured transformed into quiet satisfaction, justice without theatrics. Every glance, every subtle nod reinforced the shift in power. In that moment, I understood something profound. The trail could shake your confidence, but strategy, patience, and composure could reclaim it, and then some. Ryan had underestimated me, and now the entire team witnessed the consequences. The storm he had unleashed was turning back on him, and the fallout would be remembered long after this meeting ended. With Ryan's deception fully exposed, the office atmosphere shifted. The manager acknowledged my contributions, praised my diligence, and assured me that my credibility would never again be questioned. Recognition of the truth. Walking back to my desk, a wave of relief and empowerment washed over me. The humiliation, anger, and disbelief that had consumed me were replaced by clarity. Trust, I realized, is fragile. Betrayal hurts deeply, but composure, strategy, and patience can turn the tables. I reflected on the ordeal. Ryan's actions were cruel, but by staying calm and methodical, I had reclaimed control. This wasn't petty revenge, it was justice, precise and undeniable. The experience left me stronger, wiser, and more aware of the subtle dynamics that can exist in professional environments. It reminded me to trust carefully, document meticulously, and remain vigilant. And to all of you watching, don't forget to subscribe. More stories of betrayal, shocking confessions, and strategic triumphs are coming. Remember, the right response can turn even the deepest betrayal into a powerful lesson.